A game with an immersive fantasy world like Guild Wars 2 is often filled with exciting and interesting characters, some being fan favorites, some being hated, and some just getting memed on. But among all the characters in multiple storylines, there has to be some characters who have made some terrible, foolish decisions, right? In this video, we'll be discussing exactly that, some of the biggest fools in all of Guild Wars history. Also, just be aware this video will likely contain spoilers for some of the Guild Wars 2 storylines, so if you care about that sort of thing, take this as your fair warning. Starting out with probably one of the most glaring examples, Bangar Ruinbringer. He was the Imperator of the Blood Legion and would eventually become the leader of the Char Dominion. Before the events of Icebrood Saga, the other Imperators all respected him but considered him to be reckless, unpredictable, and often driven by rage. Not good qualities to have as a leader. He would eventually be outed for having an extreme hatred towards humans. Bangar thinks the Char are superior to other races, but he also thinks the Blood Legion is superior to other Char. So much that he would send Blood Legion spies to hide in the other legions. Now that we've established what kind of person he is, let's talk about his downfall and what really makes him a fool. Bangar knew about the Elder Dragons and how the commander and company were slaying them one by one. He became aware that the Elder Dragons could create champions and bestow great power upon them. For some reason, Bangar believed if he became a champion of Jormag, he could somehow use this power to turn the tables against it, and that somehow he would be able to control and command the dragon. Bangar didn't just go and do this on his own. He created a massive army of Char that he called the Dominion. A lot of these Char in the Dominion knew what they were doing, but I feel like some of them just got caught up on the wrong side. Bangar would lead his Dominion through the mountains, getting many of them killed along the way. He would start a war with the rest of the allied races, again getting more of his Dominion killed, but he would still press on with this quest. He would cause so many deaths that could have so easily been avoided. When this fool finally came face to face with Jormag, even Jormag knew he was unfit to lead. Bangar would become the voice of Jormag, which meant Jormag would just use him as a slave to speak through. And Bangar could not refuse this at all. Jormag's magic made it so he could never refuse a demand. Although I think he had to have known this quest of his would fail if he read up on any existing Elder Dragon research. That way he would know that generally speaking, Elder Dragon champions are still just pawns of the Elder Dragons. They bestow power on the champion, but they could so easily just remove it. Or even completely corrupt the champion. Remember every Kralkatoric champion? They were all just completely corrupted. I guess he thought that for some reason having Bram's enchanted bow would be enough to threaten Jormag into submission, but he clearly had no idea what he was getting into. So in conclusion, Bangar Ruinbringer is an absolute certified fool. Let's keep up with the Jormag theme and talk about the first Norn to ever be corrupted by Jormag, Svanir. Yes, as in Sons of Svanir. If you didn't know, the sons are named after him. Approximately 250 years ago, during the events of Guild Wars 1 Eye of the North, Svanir and his sister Jorah were out hunting a pack of wolves out on Drakkar Lake. When over the frozen lake, they were attacked by a mysterious dark presence within the lake. The presence attacked their minds, whispering thoughts into their heads, offering them strength and power. Jorah knew something was wrong. This was an evil power speaking to them. Whatever it was offering couldn't be safe, but Svanir decided to listen to it. He was intrigued by the offer. Jorah tried to warn her brother and pull him away, but he smacked her and then told her she's too weak to handle this power. Svanir would stay at Drakkar Lake and commune with this mysterious voice, speaking directly to his mind. And eventually it would corrupt him. It would teach him to hate all living things. It would transform his body into an Icebrood bear creature, which would be known as the Norn Bear. As the Norn Bear, he'd wreak havoc on the lands, killing anyone and anything that came near him, even attacking villages. What really makes him a fool is the Norn were aware that a dark, powerful presence was in Drakkar Lake. They didn't know what exactly, but they knew something was there. It would even corrupt other nearby creatures. So Svanir had to have known that this voice in his head was this evil dark power in the lake. We would later find out that it was Drakkar in the lake, and Jormag would speak to Svanir through Drakkar. But perhaps the most damning evidence of all, in Guild Wars 1, if you are on Drakkar Lake, you can literally see the body of Drakkar frozen beneath the surface. With Drakkar fully visible, how did Svanir not know what was happening to him? Or perhaps it was him that was too weak, getting himself fully corrupted. So yeah, we got another big fat fool right here. Let's move on to another Guild Wars 1 fool, Vizier Kilbron. Kilbron was the close and trusted advisor to King Reza of Or. This was back when Or was still a great and thriving kingdom. If you've ever wondered why Or looks the way it does, or perhaps when it rose up out of the sea, why was it in the sea in the first place? The short answer is the actions of Vizier Kilbron. As an advisor to the king, security and defense of the nation was important to him. He came across the Lost Scrolls, which were forbidden scrolls of dark magic hidden deep in Ara. It's said that the gods themselves were the ones to hide these scrolls away, because they knew no humans could handle the magic or would use it responsibly. When the Char armies began their war against the humans, King Reza sent most of his troops to assist the other kingdoms. This left Or relatively defenseless, and the Char would make an attack on Or. They successfully invaded, and things were not looking good. In a panic, Vizier Kilbron went to his tower with the Lost Scrolls and unleashed their full power upon the land of Or. This event would be known as the Cataclysm. There was a flash of light followed by a massive explosion that completely destroyed Or and everyone left in it. Thousands were killed on the human and Char side, and Or just crumbled away and sank into the sea. Just as the gods feared, the magic was too much to handle and was definitely not used responsibly. Now we would learn that Kilbron was manipulated by Abaddon, which ultimately would lead him to do all of this. However, what started that is Kilbron willingly converting to Abaddon worship, which at the time was already a banned religion since the other gods had outcast Abaddon, which Kilbron should have been aware of. The demon that converted Kilbron specifically used the word foolish to describe him, so the demons probably knew that Kilbron was foolish and gullible enough to be used as a pawn. You could argue that maybe his actions weren't always his own, but Kilbron was never fully possessed. He was just tricked. So in my opinion, Vizier Kilbron is another fool for the ages. Let's talk about another dude who destroyed his kingdom and killed his own people. King Adalbern. There's a lot of lore and story that Adalbern is involved in, but there's one event that makes him an absolute fool and tarnishes his legacy. King Adalbern was the king of Ascalon, loved and respected by all of his people. He was not in line for the throne, but was crowned by the people's demand. He was a strong leader and a brave warrior, but his obsession with fighting the Char and showing no mercy would be his downfall. When the Char army attacked Ascalon city, the humans were eventually overwhelmed and the city was lost. Many civilians and soldiers began to retreat to at least try to escape with their lives. But Adalbern, upon seeing his army begin to retreat, was disgusted. He thought this a cowardly action. So Adalbern would cast a spell known as the Faux Fire, which was a massive explosion that covered the entire city. It killed everyone in it, Char and human, soldier and civilian alike. And if that wasn't bad enough, any humans caught in the Faux Fire were transformed into ghosts, cursed to remain in Ascalon and haunt the land forever. Now, depending on who you ask, the events of the Faux Fire might be slightly different. If you ask descendants of Ascalon, they seem to think that Adalbern didn't do it, and it was actually an accident brought on by Adalbern's sword clashing with the claw of the Conner. However, the Faux Fire has been studied, and it's been revealed to be a divine ritual involving a reaction between magic in Adalbern's crown and his sword. So this Ascalonian take on the Faux Fire can't be true. Adalbern was completely consumed by his obsession with the Char, so much that he would rather his people stay and die than retreat. It would have been so much better for him to get his people to evacuate to safety and lead them to a new life elsewhere. Some people like to say Adalbern did nothing wrong. I hard disagree. Killing and cursing your entire kingdom is a big wrong, one that lands you on my list of historic fools. Moving on, we have another candidate for biggest fool in history, Minister Caudicus. I know I said Bangar was the worst, but Caudicus might be just as bad. Legate Minister Lord Caudicus Beetlestone the Wise is his technical title. As Legate Minister, he oversees the Ministry Guard, which is the police force that protects the human ministers. He has been very outspoken against Queen Jenna. Anything she says or does, he fights her on it all the time. He thinks that she is unfit to rule, one reason because she's so young. He thinks that it should be him on the throne instead. He is so jealous and stubborn, he is willing to do anything to tear down the peace that Queen Jenna has built. For example, he openly opposed the Char-Human Peace Treaty. He's been suspected of organizing bandit activities, being in contact with separatist groups, but worst of all, he would get himself involved with the White Mantle. We know he's willing to do anything to take the Crichton throne, so he offered assistance to the White Mantle so they could claim Kryta together with him at the lead. An absolutely foolish plan, especially since it seemed he didn't even have the full support of the White Mantle. Caudicus became the new confessor of the White Mantle. They would help him gain power by experimenting on bloodstones and teaching him to consume the power. Eventually, we would learn that there was another group of White Mantle working against him behind his back. They would work with High Inquisitor Zira to attempt to resurrect Lazarus. After Lazarus appeared to have returned, the White Mantle forces would split, and Caudicus would become desperate. He'd consume all the bloodstone that was collected for him, going completely insane and becoming a bloodstone abomination, something he should have known was going to happen to him, especially after watching many White Mantle members suffer the same fate by doing the same thing. Letters found in his office would reveal all of his crimes against Kryta. He organized Seraph companies to be killed, he had ministry guards free the bandits from jail, he organized bandit activities, he financially backed the Separatists and the White Mantle and fed them information. He even admitted to having his own wife murdered. All of this done in his greedy, foolish pursuit of power. Caudicus will land himself in F tier. F for fool. Well, as it turns out, we sure do have a lot of foolish fools out here in Tyria. It seems like a common character trait among all of them is greed. Specifically greed for power of some kind, and then also a severe lack of knowledge on whatever it is they're getting themselves caught up in. If you can think of any other fools in the world of Guild Wars, feel free to let us all know. I'm sure there are a bunch more of them out there. Anyways, thank you very much for watching if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, and bye for now.